But is it really all you need to do? Like, you're right, recipes are a good starting point, but without like a foundation of skills, then you're gonna have to Google things while you read the recipe to actually complete it. Like, let's pretend that we're following along a recipe for like a basic stir fry. There's no kitchen knowledge, and you decide not to Google anything along the way. The ingredients list calls for bell peppers diced up. You kind of know that dicing is a little bit bigger than mincing, and it's obviously not slicing, so you just hack away at it with a bread knife, because a knife's a knife, right? You don't know the claw technique, so you don't know how to protect yourself from cuts, so you do get a couple of like little cuts on the things. However, you get the pieces mostly into chunks that are definitely uneven, definitely not consistent in size, but like close enough, right? Next, it calls for half an onion diced. You cut off the root because you don't know that most of the acid that makes your eyes burn is contained in the root. So now you are cooking blind. So you cut that off, then you like trying to chop it off as much as possible. Again, you cut yourself because you don't know the claw technique. So you do not know how to actually cut something without cutting yourself. Not to mention, you're still using a bread knife because a knife is a knife, right? You don't know the difference, and that makes it very jagged. There's a lot of jagged, mushy pieces now on your plate, but hey, it's onions that's cut up. You keep going. You've hacked away all of your vegetables, and so they're chunks that are like, they're a little jagged. The pieces are not the most consistent, but like, it's doable, right? Next comes the chicken. You have to cook raw chicken, but first you need to cut it up into bite sized chunks. That's what the recipe calls for. So, you take your bread knife, you hack away at the chicken until it's like kind of bite sized chunks. Of course, you're doing this on your roommate's wooden cutting board, so you have no idea that all that bacteria from that is gonna seep into the cutting board. You wouldn't know that, it's not in the recipe. You've never worked with these things before. And a cutting board's a cutting board, right? Well, let's just hope you wash it really well with soapy water later. Next thing you need to do is you need to brown the chicken on medium high heat with 1 tablespoon of olive oil. You're using a bigger pan because that's all you have available to you. So that 1 tablespoon does not completely coat the pan, but you're hoping it's fine. So you just put the chicken in there. You fry it up as much as you can until it looks about brown. Luckily, you do have a meat thermometer, so you can temp check to make sure there's no salmonella. Then you put in the vegetables. However, the vegetables are inconsistently cut up, so as much as you're going to try and cook them, they're not all going to be cooked the same way. The recipe tells you to cook in the vegetables next. You throw it in and it tells you to cook it in for 1 minute. So you do. However, your stovetop is not the same as the stovetop that the recipe maker has. So the vegetables are a little bit crunchier than they were promised. But let's not forget the rice that the vegetables and the meat goes on, right? After all, stir fry is great with rice. Rice is easy, right? The instructions are right on the back. You just put 1 cup of rice into 2 cups of boiling water, let it simmer for 20 minutes, and then it's done. Maybe a dash of salt, whatever a dash is, that is. Or even worse, it says salt to taste, whatever that means. Of course, the bag did not tell you to wash the rice beforehand. So you were very surprised when the rice is cooked that there is just a layer of scum and mushy rice sticking to the pan. You half-heartedly scrape at the rice crusted to the non-stick pan. You use a metal spatula, of course, to try and scrape it off, because spatula's a spatula and a pot's a pot, right? Eventually you give up, you take the rice that you can, you take the stir fry, that's all done, you mix it all up, and you have a pretty edible meal. It's okay, but it's definitely nothing that you're happy about. Like, you can eat it, but like, it's not good at the same time. It's not delicious. But you followed the recipe, right? And if you read, you can cook, right? So if it's not even barely edible after you followed the recipe to the letter, that means there's something wrong with you, right? Yeah, this is why I hate the people who say if you can read, then you can cook. Because it's not just all there is. There's so many skills that you need to learn. And usually that comes with practice and through YouTube tutorials or like some sort of tutorial on just that basic skill. And that's perfectly fine. You can take a recipe, you can Google a lot of the things on it, you will be okay. Like, you can figure it out. It just takes a lot of practice. And the idea of you can read, you can cook, or you can just, if you have a recipe, you can do whatever. Like, it does set an expectation that the food's gonna be delicious, that it's gonna be ready to, like, cook for people, at the very least, even if it's not restaurant quality, after one try. And that is not the case, especially when you don't know what you're doing. So, no, it's really not all you need to do because a recipe is not a cooking class. I love cooking. Cooking is a lot of fun, and now that I know what I'm doing a little bit more, it's really rewarding. However, the whole idea of if you can read, you can cook is so discouraging because it's going to turn out bad the first time when you don't know what you're doing. No matter what the recipe is, even a basic one like stir fry, which is very basic, then it's going to turn out bad when you don't know what you're doing. It takes practice. Not to mention, you have to get to know your oven or stove because every oven and stove is different. It messed up my grandmother, who is a very, very experienced cook, when she got a new stove after 30 years of having the old one. So, yeah, after some basic skills have been mastered, then sure, following a recipe is probably all you need to do. But before that, like, it really isn't. It's definitely not that simple.